Ever wonder what can happen around the world on just one single day? Well, today is April 3rd, 2026, and the answer is a whole lot. We're talking everything from military standoffs and major elections to unbelievably ambitious nation-building projects, all going on at the same time. So let's take a snapshot of the globe and break down what's really happening today.
And right out of the gate, the day's biggest story is coming out of the Middle East. This headline from CNN really says it all. A conflict in Iran is sending these massive shockwaves through the global economy. And it all centers on one single critical location.
And that location is the Strait of Hormuz. It's what's known as a maritime choke point, one of those super narrow, super important waterways that are just vital for getting energy around the world. I mean, so much of the world's oil has to pass through it, which is why it's been a flashpoint for, well, decades. And right now, it's the epicenter of a crisis that's been bubbling up for over a month. So, how in the world did we get here? Well, let's just do a quick rundown of the timeline. It all really kicked off back on February 28th, when Iran just shut down all shipping traffic after some strikes from the US and Israel. Then, by March 9th, things escalated, with the US announcing it planned to seize control of the strait. 10 days after that, a full-blown military campaign to reopen the waterway began. And that brings us right up to today, where the UN Security Council is stepping in, getting ready to vote on creating a protection force. The stakes just could not be higher. Now, you know a military crisis in the world's most important oil artery isn't going to stay local for long. Let's shift over to the markets, because you can see the direct impact this is having on finances. Well, everywhere. Wow, $110.29. That's the price for a single barrel of West Texas Intermediate, what everybody calls WTI, crude oil as of today. This huge surge is a direct result of that strait being shut down. And you can bet it's fueling major fears of a global energy crisis and, of course, runaway inflation. Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Let's talk about gold for a second. Normally, right, when there's a crisis, investors get nervous and they flock to gold as a quote-unquote safe haven, which pushes the price up. But this time is different. That oil surge is creating massive inflation fears, and that makes central banks way more likely to raise interest rates to fight it. Since gold doesn't pay any interest, it suddenly becomes a less attractive thing to own. It's a classic tug of war.
So with all that going on, where does the price actually land? Right around $4,675 an ounce. It seems like that fear of higher interest rates is just barely winning out, causing the price to dip a little bit, even with all this global chaos. A really fascinating market dynamic at play here. But look, the world is a big place, and it doesn't just stop for one crisis. Let's pivot completely. We're heading over to Southeast Asia, where on this very same day, a huge political event is unfolding in Myanmar, one that's really marking a new and, for many, a concerning chapter for the nation.
So today was a big day in Myanmar's parliament. They held an indirect presidential election. And as you can see from the results, Min Aung Hlaing, who has been the country's military leader since the 2021 coup, has been elected president. And not just elected, he won with a commanding 73% of the electoral vote. This essentially formalizes his power. But really, the story here isn't just who won, but how he won. See, this isn't like a popular vote where everyone casts a ballot. The whole process is really, really important to understand. The president is chosen by an electoral college that has 3 different committees. Now, 2 of them are made up of elected members of parliament, but the third is composed entirely of military personnel. Each committee gets to nominate one candidate, and right there, that's the key. It's a system that basically bakes in military influence from the start, and it's why this result is being met with some deep concern from many democratic nations around the world. All right, let's shift gears again, this time to Africa. Ethiopia on April 3rd is, well, it's a perfect example of a nation of stark contrasts. You have a country that's grappling with immediate tragedy, while at the exact same time, it's chasing these incredibly ambitious economic goals. First up, there's some really urgent and, frankly, heartbreaking news. A major humanitarian emergency is happening right now in the country's south. Heavy rains have caused just devastating floods and landslides. We're talking loss of life, buried homes, and thousands of people displaced. Relief operations are scrambling to respond as we speak. And yet, and this is where the picture gets so complicated, at the exact same moment, the economic story coming out of Ethiopia is one of just incredible optimism. I mean, look at these competing forecasts for GDP growth. They're all strong, but the Ethiopian government itself is aiming for a jaw-dropping 8.9%.
They're positioning themselves to be one of the fastest growing economies on the entire planet. So how are they trying to do this? Well, part of their economic strategy involves a pretty big financial pivot. Ethiopia is working to deepen its ties with China, exploring what's called RMB trade settlement. Basically, it just means that when they trade with China, they'll use the Chinese currency, the yuan, instead of the US dollar. The goal here is to build up their reserves of foreign cash, make business smoother with their number one trading partner, and hopefully attract even more investment. It's a big strategic move. Okay, for our last stop on this little trip around the globe, let's look at a nation that is literally building its future from the ground up, with a vision that stretches out for decades to come. Meet Nusantara. Yeah, on the island of Borneo, Indonesia is taking on one of the most ambitious projects you can imagine, building a brand new capital city completely from scratch. Right now, today, work is focused on the new legislative and judicial buildings. And if you want to know just how ambitious this is, just look at the price tag. We are talking about 35 billion US dollars. This isn't just about new buildings. It's about trying to shift the entire nation's center of gravity away from Jakarta, which is sinking and incredibly overpopulated. And this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's all laid out in 5 big phases. Construction started back in 2022, and get this, the final piece is scheduled to be finished in 2045. They timed it perfectly to mark the 100th anniversary of Indonesian independence. Talk about long-term planning. It's nation building on an absolutely epic scale. So there you have it, a crisis brewing in the Middle East, a major political shift in Myanmar, tragedy and ambition side by side in Ethiopia, and a future capital literally rising from the jungle in Indonesia. All of it happening on a single day. It's just a powerful reminder of how many different, complex stories are unfolding across our planet at any given moment. The only real question left is, what's tomorrow going to look like?